All right, we'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order, please. I know we're running a little late this afternoon, so we want to start as quickly as we can, please. Are there any public comments, Doug?
No, there are not.
None. Okay, there are no public comments. The first order of business is the approval of our minutes of our November 12th Finance Committee meeting. May I please have a motion? Second, please. Please, second. I'll second it. All in favor? Any opposed? Minutes are so approved. Doug, go ahead. Why don't you talk about the work plan and the budgets?
No changes to the work plan for December. We have the draft proposal for the 2014 Finance Committee work plan. We're back to the 11 meeting minimum per year structure. It's there for your information. If you have any comments, suggestions, let us know and we can incorporate that into next month. Yes, next we do not have a budget watch. We'll be presenting the 2014 budget shortly, but we have Finance Watch. Pat McCoy.
Okay, thank you. Finance Watch appears on Roman 4-1 of your committee book this month, and we have a couple of transactions to report. The first was a competitively bid diesel fuel hedge on November 19th that for $7.6 million, and this was won by JP Morgan Ventures Energy Corporation, and our all-in price there was $2.78 per gallon. Next, we have a remarketing of 83.5 million TBTA General Revenue Bonds 2008 B1. As you can see here, the all-in TIC was a 3.08% cost of funds with an average life of 10.5 years. So happy to take any questions on those, if there are any. Next, we have a transaction that was just emailed to the board last week. This is a $66.3 million remarketing of TBTA General Revenue Refunding Bonds 2005 B4A and 4B. We'll price those bonds in two separate series of FRNs tomorrow. That's a floating rate note with Barclays as remarketing agent. So we'll report on that at the next committee meeting. Lastly, I just want to point out here on Roman 4-2 that the refunding of TBTA 2002E bonds, with the refunding bonds being designated as Series 2013D. We completed pricing last Thursday, and this was with a syndicate led by Jefferies and Company and Goldman Sachs as special co-senior manager on that. We achieved a very positive outcome with savings of approximately $5.5 million. And as we talked about last month when this was approved by the board, this is the first part of the steps that allow us to extract additional savings after the passage of some time, and we'll report back to the committee when we're able to undertake the remaining components of the transaction. But we were very pleased with the outcome here, and that official statement was just mailed out this morning to the board.
Pat, excuse me. That was an NPV savings of the $5+ million?
That's an NPV savings, and good question. The transaction itself incorporated both fixed rate bonds as well as two sub-series of floating rate notes. So as you know, with all of our variable rate products, we do budget 4% on our variable rate products. So we'll keep our all data outstanding table up to date. So with the passage of time, we'll see how those are going to be performing. I would note that we were again pleased with the spreads on those. These are taxable bonds. So in the case of the 1-year floating rate note, we priced at a price of LIBOR plus 40 basis points, and in the 2-year floating rate note, we priced at LIBOR plus 65. So again, we're expecting good results over time, but again, it's a periodic rate set on that.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And so that concludes Finance Watch. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? No. Next thing is the 2014 budget. Bob, would you please comment on that?
Certainly. In front of you, you have a budget package. There was absolutely no change between the November plan, which was presented last month, and the plan that is embedded into the budget and financial plan going forward. Included in the package are the same staff summaries and agency financial schedules that were in each of the board books. What I would draw your attention to is at the beginning there is a staff summary, and I would just like to highlight a few things on this staff summary and then go through for you and show you the things that you will be advancing to the board and that the board will need to approve. Beginning under the purpose under page 1 of 9, this is to secure MTA Board adoption of the accompanying 2014 final proposed budget and four-year financial plan 2014 to 2017, and it includes both the 2013 final estimate and all plan adjustments. It also authorizes budget and plan adjustments, budget and cash management actions, and other actions that are set forth in the staff summary. And these are pretty much the same type of actions that are authorized. There will be a few additional ones, and I will highlight it. The November plan, just to remind you, did end up with ending cash balances of $212 million in 13, $106 million in 2014, $44 million in 2015, $61 million in 2016, and a projected cash deficit of $191 million in 2017. So again, we balanced the budget through 2016 with what I consider to be a manageable deficit of $191 million in 2017, with the caveat that built into this financial plan are certain assumptions such as 3 years of net zeros. And so when we say that we balance the budget and we do have a manageable deficit in 2017, it is with 3 years of net zeros. But let me just highlight a few more things that are different. If you turn to 3-9 on the summary, we have projected biennial fare and toll increases in 2015 and 2017 now of 4% a year, as opposed to the 7.5% a year that we had built into the July plan. We have important operational and maintenance needs that are funded. The plan maintains the investments first proposed in July, including $76 million in operational and maintenance needs, $18 million of new or restored service and service quality investments, $12 million in increased platform service to meet loading and headway guidelines, and $11 million in additional customer enhancements. Oh, I'm reading at the top of the page. So now on page 5, on page I-4 of the book, we also have support for the capital program, which has been increased. We were increasing the amount up to $120 million a year beginning in 2015, 16, 17 for the down payment of the next capital program. It includes new MTA fare reduction efficiencies. We had $50 million of new efficiencies that we were putting in place in 2014. We increased that to $100 million in 2015. Another $50 million to $150 in 2016, and then up to $200 million by 2017. Also on page 5 of 9 in the staff summary, we have the unfunded pension liability is being addressed. If you recall, there is the Long Island Railroad Additional Pension Plan that has a $1.2 billion unfunded liability. We are putting aside money to address those needs. And we continue to fund the OPEB liability. If you go, yes, it's this book here. Yeah. If you go to page 7 of 9 in the staff summary, you'll see the recommendations that we're presenting to the board. I'm not going to go through and read them, but again, it is to adopt the final proposed budget and four-year financial plan with the adjustments. It's to authorize staff and the chief, under the guidance of the CEO and Chief Financial Officer, to implement subsidies and other adjustments, authorize staff to invest $80 million into the Long Island Railroad Pension Plan this year and $30 million a year beginning in 2014 going forward. And if you recall, the funding source for that was real estate revenues, which we were forecasting, but we had some concern may not be realized. And so we said, to the extent that those monies do come in, they'll be used to reduce the pension liability to generate additional savings in the future. If the monies don't come in, we won't make those investments. It's also to use any unexpended 2013 general reserve to further reduce the pension liability, to accelerate the repayment of the capital financing fund by $100 million, to make the additional contributions to the capital program, to put money aside for pay-as-you-go capital for Sandy, to make technical adjustments in February, and to authorize adjustments of MTA budgets and forecasts to reflect any labor settlements, and to do any other budget or cash management actions as we have done in the past, and those include advances on TBTA operating surpluses and subsidies, use of the MTA MRT corporate account monies, use of payroll mobility tax and replacement funds and MTA aid, and also to authorize the CEO or the CFO to engage in interagency loans as authorized in our legislation, to use the stabilization reserve to make sure that we have adequate funding for each of the agencies and also to pay debt service. And finally, to use GASB monies as they come in, either for interagency loans or intercompany loans. So at the end of that staff summary, you do see the consolidated schedule of operations, which does show as a company the revenues coming in, the expenditures, the subsidies that are provided, and the adjustments on the second page that we intend to present to you for your final approval at the board meeting on Wednesday. Any discussion?
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation, Bob. Looking in the staff summary, you have under NYCT service enhancements a host of service restorations that I presume were from the previous budget, not for the budget going forward. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, they were incorporated in the July plan, which we rolled forward into the November
That's what I
plan.
thought. And not listed here are the service improvements on the 2, 4, 5, 7, F, G, and L, which are coming this coming April of 2014. So I don't know why they're not listed here, since these are from prior approvals, but they ought to be listed here, should they not?
This would be the changes that were proposed in July. So anything from the prior group of service investments with a delayed rollout, that would be part of that number. So those are already embedded within the financial plan, but they hadn't been voted on. Remember, in the July plan, you didn't vote on it, so we left those numbers in, and now now you're actually, voting on that budget.
Okay, those that can vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me just also say that we're very grateful for these service enhancements. Some of them help to right the wrongs that were done in 2010, but it really doesn't go near far enough in terms of what was lost in 2010. And I have had discussions with Carmen and Joe Leader about, for instance, the weekend M extension to Delancey Street. It's a great thing, but much more useful would have been an extension of the J train, so it takes in the biggest free transfer in the city, which is Fulton transfer, obviously. It misses it by one stop on weekends, and I was told that once Fulton Center opens, it's likely that we would get that, and yet that's not included anywhere here, and that troubles me a little bit.
Okay. Sure.
Look, we all want to provide more service to the riders. There's not even a question about that. I don't think there's anybody at the table that doesn't. So what we've talked about with Tom and everybody is, again, like we did last year, we have a lot of uncertainties in this budget for obvious reasons, and some that we didn't expect up until, unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago. So the commitment I think you'll have, and I think everybody that wants to restore more service, which is not really a argument, as I said, was just what we did last year. We're going to take a look at how we do for the first 6 months. There's a lot of uncertainty going on, which I don't think anybody around this table would disagree. Everything from the union contract to the unfortunate incident, on Metro North and everything else that we're dealing with. We want to see how our expenses come in, and we will look at this budget again as we did in this past year, and we did add some things, as everybody knows, in July, and I think that's the prudent thing to do. Meanwhile, these things that are budgeted, these things have been committed for, are in the works. They will be put in as promised this spring, and when July comes around, we have a commitment that we will sit down and we'll see how we're doing. Let's see how the subsidies come. Let's see
Andrew,
how
we
the
have a commitment from
taxes
who
come.
exactly?
That's a general commitment from everybody here. We're going to look at it. We will look at where we stand in July. I think right now the prudent thing to do is go ahead with everything that we've got here and that we've budgeted for, and relook at the whole situation next July, Bob.
That's it.
Is that
Yes.
is that my understanding and yours too?
Yes.
And I think that's the right thing. Wait, I think, Chuck, sorry, Chuck's next. Put,
First, I'd like to thank you for your explanatory statement, which I accept. And I'd like to thank Bob for doing a Herculean job in putting this together. I'd like to make clear, as I have made clear in the past, that I do not believe that the 000s are either realistic or appropriate, and that the Nicolau decision in ATU has established the pattern. I make the point because while I will vote for this budget, I do so with the comment that I do not think that those 000s are appropriate, either for the represented or the unrepresented who have gone for so many years without an increase. I think that's blatantly unfair to them, as it is to the representative, and I thank you.
With respect to the comments that the chair just made, I appreciate them. However, I am going to move to amend the budget, similar to the fact that what we did for the prior 2 years, in which, in fact, I believe that we ended up restoring more than we asked for at the meeting. I do recognize there are some uncertainties, but I do want to have a motion to amend the budget on the table, to have that discussion take place as a formal expression of the sense of many of the members in this room that we want to continue the process like we did the last 2 cycles, to look at areas of the city that are either underserved, overcrowded, wait times too long, et cetera, to look at new service, to also give time to the new mayor and his potential new appointments to have the ability to have some impact on this year as well. So I'm not going to speak to it when I make the motion afterwards, but I will accept assuming that it's second, which I believe it will be, a friendly motion to table that, so that we can formally go down the process that the chair just indicated. I'm sorry, and I apologize if my intention was certainly to be regional, not just the city, because there are certainly needs that are in our northern neighbors and the Long Island as well, and I have always included that as part of the intention, as we don't try to just grab for one area and not look at all of the needs. Thank you.
John?
Mr. Chairman, I have 2 questions about the budget now. Okay. So, thanks, Bob. Just 2.
Was that a motion that did?
Alan, why don't you make the motion if you want?
Was that a motion?
I'll make the motion then. I move to amend the budget by $25 million for the purpose of restorations, enhancements, investments in improving the transit around the region.
And I will second that motion.
Given that you already anticipate the friendly motion to table,
We'll table it till Wednesday.
Consider the motion made.
May I just make a comment on that motion?
And I just want to make one comment on it before we do that. Restoration of services and enhancement of services are essential. We cannot go through passing a 4-year budget that indicates in there are no service enhancements. That is unacceptable to me and maybe to others, and we'll discuss that on Wednesday. We had this discussion at the Long Island Railroad Committee meeting this morning, okay? There are standees all over the place on the Long Island Railroad. The reason is because in many cases I have 1 hour or 90-minute headways. Not 5 or 8 minutes on the subway, 60 or 90-minute headways. That forces people to do things they don't want to do, which is number one, stand on a train, which is not good for them, first of all, and unsafe, second of all, and other than that, get in a car. Neither of one of which we want to do. It's my goal, I know Metro North already has it in many cases, 30-minute headways, off-peak. That is essential for a robust transportation system in the suburbs. I'm not urging the city. The city already has 5 to 8 minutes. I'd get them 2 minutes and we could figure out a way to do so from a signal perspective. But I can't, I understand, but I can no longer accept 60 or 90-minute headways on the Long Island Railroad, off-peak in many places, and that's why I'm supporting this amendment, because it would be a goal toward eliminating that in some cases. We already eliminated it on Port Washington, but Port Washington already had 30 minutes. I have other places which have 60 and 90 minute, and I don't think that's any longer acceptable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? John?
Okay, so the motion's tabled, is that, I don't,
Make a comment on the motion? Just,
okay.
Jim, would you please, so there's no mistake?
Was there a motion to table?
Freddie made it.
So I think you just need to vote on the motion to table.
Fine. So we have a motion to table the amendment. A second, please. Chuck, second. Okay, all in favor of tabling the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Jim, you want to count this, make sure you got it right?
Well, we'll vote to table. We're voting to table,
Okay.
we'll bring it up on Wednesday. That's fully
Fine.
understandable.
Okay, great.
We understand.
Thank you.
Not a problem. That's fine, that's good.
Just want to make sure it's
Yeah,
done
no,
right,
we're
so there's
good.
no complaints
No
later.
complaints.
Okay.
Always.
So
Okay.
I
So
have
now
two
we
other
need a
quick-
vote, now we need a vote, please, to advance the budget to the full board meeting on Wednesday.
When can I ask my 2 questions?
You
After
can
this
ask them
vote
right
or
now.
before? Okay. All right, thanks. Bob, has there ever been an attempt to give the non-union managers raises through productivity enhancements, similar to the concept of the triple net zeros?
Not in my experience here, and I would say that it was discussed at some point early on when we recognized the problem we had with management. One could argue that the productivity savings came about from the reduction in the administrative staff, 15% agency-wide or company-wide, the agencies, and 20% at headquarters. That generated significant revenue. That was just taken as overall savings as part of our cost reductions. So in a sense, what you're seeing with the non-represented workers is they are being asked to take hard zeros, and any productivity that's being generated by their extra effort or working with fewer staff members is just working to the benefit of the overall company.
All right, I guess it's not timely to discuss that any further, but it seems like an inequity if the productivity savings have not been applied. The second question I had, there will be increased costs from the horrific derailment, both capital and operating, and they're known and unknown. since you formulated this budget prior to the, obviously, very unfortunate incident, is there any change you would want to make or advise us about, given some things that you've learned about? Because we already know there'll be increased capital costs, there'll be increased operating costs in the interim. Forget about PTC costs, but just for this calendar year.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the casualty loss that we expect should probably be, recovered within our kind of standard casualty retention over all agency policy, which then would be available, would make our general reserve available to help cover those costs. And that's, again, one of the reasons we have a general reserve is for things like this.
But what about increased staffing needs, increased signage costs,
Yeah, right.
increased signal costs?
Until we know what that is, and again, we're still gathering the information together in terms of operating expenses, those are things that we will be probably just looking to have covered with our general reserve, until we have a better handle. And then when we get to, the July plan, if we need to make modifications in our budget going forward, we will. There will be the additional capital cost. Some of those, for PTC are already reflected in our the 04 to 09 and the 10 to 14 capital program, anticipated to be in the 15 to 19 capital program. The other things that are being done, not just, PTC, I expect to see those in a capital budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, and we have a second. All in favor of advancing the budget to the board meeting? Any opposed?
Abstain?
One abstention. Doug, will you make that note? Two abstentions. Alan, you're abstaining too? Both? Okay, two abstentions. Everybody else votes in favor of it, Doug. Yes, sir. Okay, so moved.
Moving on.
Yep, move on.
Next action item, Executive Order 88, Energy Audit and Retro Commissioning Studies, which is in Section 5, Page 1. We're asking the board to approve that the MTA have energy audits and retro commissioning studies performed in MTA facilities utilizing the services of New York Power Authority, NYPA, consistent with the MTA NYPA Energy Services Program Agreement approved by the board in December 2005, and in furtherance of the objective of Executive Order 88, governing the improvement of energy efficiency in state buildings. We need a motion.
Okay, a motion, please. And a second, please. Any discussion?
If I'm reading this correctly, paragraph 4, 5.1, it's not actually NYPA that's doing the evaluations, the consultants hired.
That's correct.
Evaluation.
That's, yes. Sure.
Any other comments? Then we have a second. All in favor, please? Any people opposed? So moved. Good. Doug, next.
Okay. We have a number of action items that Pat McCoy is going to speak on.
Okay. The first action item, yes. One at a time, I think. Yeah, because they're all slightly different. The first one is on Roman 5-3 of the committee book, and this is a staff summary together with supplemental resolutions authorizing the issuance of bonds in 2014 for existing approved capital projects. On the transit and commuter side, this is a $2 billion number, and for bridges and tunnels, it's $330 million. The assumptions are built into the financial plan and therefore the budget as well, and this is that requires a vote. Happy to take any questions on the staff summary itself.
Motion, please. A second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Pat, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Next, if you turn to Roman 5-48 of the committee book, there is a staff summary followed by supplemental resolutions authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds from time to time, so long as those refundings meet the board authorized refunding policy. And for your reference, the board policy on refundings is restated right behind the staff summary. So this will allow us to take advantage of favorable market conditions to achieve debt service savings from time to time. If there's question.
Thanks. Pat, I noticed that, what page? There's the refunding policy
Yes.
in here. What if you have a situation, given the market, where you need a low to high refunding, or you have a situation where you want to do a refunding to change a covenant or something like that, where there may not be savings? Where is that covered in our policy?
It's not contemplated here. In those instances, we would explicitly come back for board authorization to undertake that type of transaction, similar to what we did on the TBTA 2013D transaction.
Which may slow it up, but
It may slow it up, but those, we don't anticipate those circumstances, and we don't think that should be part of our routine, workflow.
okay, that sounds right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Motion, please. Second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Next item.
Okay, thank you. Next is Roman 5-110 of your committee book. This is a staff summary seeking board authority to increase our amount of open market purchases for any outstanding bonds from 25 million to 50 million. This is something that the board has previously authorized. In fact, the prior staff summary does appear behind for your reference. This allows us to purchase bonds from investors that want to get out of a particular position. If they're willing to do that at what we consider to be a savings, which is less than the face value of the bond, the board would be delegating to staff the authority to make those purchases and in effect save money on future debt service.
In the case of this request and the one we just passed,
Yeah.
when the board authorizes you to do this,
Yes.
is there any time limit on that, or is that into perpetuity?
Yes.
1 year, is it?
No,
This is 1 year.
on the refundings, it's 1 year. On the open market purchases, we didn't contemplate a time limit. Now the board, as I said previously, authorized 25 million. We've consumed 13 million of that authorization to buy back bonds. These are, in fact, all the bonds we've purchased back have been auction rate bonds that have been failing in the market, and the investors wanted to get out of their positions. There's been no ability for those investors to trade them in the secondary market, so we bought them back at less than face value, again achieving savings. There's, so
I would just say, it's my expectation on this type, where we're asking for the ability to go out and do open market purchases. If we bring it back, I'd bring it back to you every year, because I think you want to see the results. What have we done? Where are we? And so, while we may have it, just like we did for a year, and we brought it back this time, that would be the intention.
so
To give you
You have others available?
at the current you mean other solicitations? No. No.
Securities, have we bought those back? Are some still outstanding?
We currently have 3 sub-series of auction rate securities outstanding in the total amount of about 300 million. The bulk of those, 200 million under the transportation revenue credit, and the balance are 2 Broadway COPs. So they're all auctions. They're all currently failing in the market, but they're failing at what I would characterize as very low and attractive rates. And so again, we're continuing to watch those bonds and watch market conditions relative to those bonds, but we're not.
What are we paying there now?
Sure.
What's the default rate?
Let me just direct you to the Finance Watch where we have that information. If you turn in your book to, I think the best page is Roman 4-11, and you see those auctions broken out by series, and you can see on the transportation revenue bonds, those are the 2002 B1s and B2s. The fail rate is 200% of 1-month LIBOR. In the case of the 2 Broadway COPs, the fail rate is 275% of 1-month LIBOR. So if you look at the most recent rate sets there on the TRB bonds, you see a 0.328%. In the case of the 2 Broadway cops, you see a 0.451%. So you can see we're paying less than 0.5% because of the historically low rate environment we continue to find ourselves in.
Does the fact that they continue to be outstanding under these circumstances for as long as they have been in any way impact upon our credit?
I do not believe it does in any way, no.
Does it in any way impact upon our view in the marketplace?
No, I do not believe it does. You may recall a couple years back, one of the outcomes of the financial crisis was a rather extensive settlement agreement between various states' attorneys generals and certain of the commercial banks that primarily served as auction remarketing agents on these bonds. One of the outcomes of that settlement, in addition to fines and being levied, was that the large brokerages that were the primary marketing agents of the bonds were required to buy back the bonds at face value from any retail investor. Now, professional investors could not be, were not included in that, but some of the banks, in fact, did extend the ability of the professional investors to sell those back to the remarketing agents at face value. So the majority of these bonds are actually held by the broker dealers that we engaged at the time when we issued them, and so there's to your point, are investors hurting because of this? I would say no.
So this is primarily held institutionally now.
Correct.
And not individually.
Correct.
Thank you.
A second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved, Doug. Pat.
Okay.
Doug and Pat, you.
Thank you. Okay, so the last staff summary from finance here appears on Roman 5-114 of your committee book, and this is seeking board authorization. I'm sorry, there's one more after this. This is authorization to amend existing fuel hedge swap agreements to conform rating downgrade termination events to MTA Board approved swap guidelines. Essentially what this means is we have, we always want to competitively bid out our fuel hedge agreements. And with respect to 2 of our counterparties, most notably Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs Group, we reference Moody's and S&P ratings, and in the case of both of those, their Moody's rating is below the single A category. They're at Baa2 in the case of Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and Goldman Sachs J. Aron is at Baa1. This is what I would characterize as an amendment that allows us to continue to trade with these entities for our fuel hedge program. Again, we think it's the right process to use multiple bidders in these monthly hedges, and this is just allows us to conform our master agreements to those rating requirements. There's a question.
I'd like to be recorded as abstaining on this one.
Doug? Okay. May we have a motion, please? Second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you. Okay, next one is on 5-117 of your book, and this is seeking board authorization to approve a financial advisor and a swap advisor. Our incumbent providers for the financial advisory role is Lamont Financial Services, and in the case of swaps, it is Swap Financial Services. We, as we periodically do, we issue the RFP to solicit interest in the service. We received 11 proposals for the respective services, and we accepted proposals for both services or one or the other. And as you can see here in the discussion, we lay out the proposers. The the unanimous recommendation of the selection committee is to recommend the PFM group as financial advisor and to recommend Mohanty Gargiulo as the swap advisor. I would just note that we've had a good service from our incumbent providers, and we're very appreciative of their efforts. But I think the committee, saw a very competitive and strong response to the RFP, and is recommending a change in the service providers as a result. We have not negotiated fees, and what we've laid out here, the fees that the various firms proposed, and we would go back to if so approved, go back to those entities, the PFM group and Mohanty Gargiulo, and negotiate fees that are no worse than this and preferably better than this.
A motion, please.
No worse.
A motion, please.
Right.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? So moved. Thanks, Pat.
All right, thank you.
Doug, next item.
Yes, sir. The next item is MTA and TBTA reimbursement resolutions for federal tax purposes, which can be found on Section 5, page 119. We're asking the board to adopt MTA and TBTA reimbursement resolutions, which are required by federal tax law to preserve the ability to finance certain capital projects on a tax-exempt basis.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved, Doug. Next.
Okay. Next is the approval of Environmental Liaison Council, Section 5, page 122. This staff summary is to authorize MTA agency use of a law firm servicing as Environmental Liaison Counsel for a group of defendants, including MTA New York City Transit and federal court contribution lawsuits brought to recover environmental remediation costs.
A motion, please. Yeah.
Would this be a law firm that we're already doing business
No.
with? This would be a
No.
brand-new firm?
It's a firm that I went through this very carefully with Jim. It's a firm that this group has chosen to represent all the participants in the suit, and it's much more beneficial, which I agree, for us to tag on and choose their firm than to bring another counsel in. Well, they're just for this, for this environmental legislation. This case, this one case. Yes.
Who are the other 8 of the defendants? Do you just have a list? I mean, it just keeps saying the group of 9, a group of 9. I'm curious who the other...
Jim, you want to address this, please?
Jim Henley's here.
Jim Henley's here.
John, Commissioner, I don't have those with me, but I can certainly supply those to you.
Are they public entities or
No, I
all
think they're
private?
principally private corporations.
Do you know what their selection process was and what the rates are approximately as compared to our rates?
I know what the rates are approximately. There are 2 partners at the Gibbons firm, or a partner and associate. I think the rate is $4.25 an hour for one of them. I think it's slightly north of that, but still in the $400 range for the other.
And you're comfortable with this
Yes, I think-
firm, with this?
Yes, I think I'm
Situation.
very comfortable with the firm. It's recognized for its work in Superfund and remediation sort of cases, is experienced in that area. Its rates compare, I think, actually favorably to the rates of some of the environmental law counsel that are currently on our panel. And the most important point is that what we're doing is, instead of having to retain our own counsel and inefficiently spend the same money, we're sharing those expenses with 9 other entities that are in very similar situations. So by sharing that cost, we reduce the amount of fees that we would be paying substantially.
Do they have a New York office at all?
Gibbons? I believe so.
Thank you.
Okay, so a motion, please.
May I request that a copy of the names of the other parties be given to us prior to the board meeting, and until then, I ask to be recorded as abstaining because I don't know if I have a conflict.
We'll certainly provide that to you.
A motion, please. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
Andrew, till I see the list, I also might have to have a conflict.
I understand. Okay,
Thanks.
but you'll get, Jim's gonna take
Yeah.
care of it. You'll know.
Otherwise, yes.
Right.
Thanks.
We understand why.
Next is procurements. For headquarters, we have 5 procurements, 1 non-competitive and 4 competitive, for a grand total of $3,480,000.
Motion, please. Second? All in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
For Metro North, there are 4 procurements for a grand total of $11,084,563. 2 are non-competitive, 2 are competitive. One procurement for IT consulting services that is included in the book was removed from the Metro North voting
Right,
pattern.
but wait. Right, but wait,
Yes.
we spent a lot of time in the pre-briefing for the Finance Committee, and I asked, who's gonna, Lyle? And, Lyle, why don't you come up? I think you really have the best understanding of it. And try and explain, because I think this one actually makes a lot of sense for us to prove and send to the board. And I think while it explains it to everybody, you're gonna understand why this is actually a very good procurement and something that we've been working on for a long time.
Right.
Where's John? Because John brought up, is John? Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Commissioner
So-
Balin.
So this is something that the Business Center actually had taken over. It's a centralized procurement, and I want Wal to explain what they're doing and the concept behind this.
Sure. Let me address Commissioner Balin's concerns first, and then we'll get into the strategy behind this particular procurement. Commissioner Balin was concerned that we are adding another 5 years to an existing contract, thereby excluding new and emerging companies from competing in this area, which would ultimately benefit the MTA as well as small businesses that are looking to make an entry. And we explained right before this meeting to Commissioner Balin that indeed we are not adding any time whatsoever to this procurement. We are staying within the 5-year award. It ends December 31st, 2015. But what we have done, in fact, is we have pushed more and more business towards those smaller firms that save the MTA about 50 cents on the dollar. And by going less and less to non-competitive procurements to brand name firms like Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, and what have you, we have been able to get very competent technical resources, put them on projects, and end up with a much lower total cost for these projects. So the concerns that were raised were really based on a quick read of the staff summary. In fact, they are already addressed here.
One of the problems, Chuck, when we buy these proprietary software systems, we've had this discussion many times over, the rates are just enormous on maintenance and so forth. What they've done here with the Business Center is, the way I understand it anyway, and while, tell me if I'm wrong, is have a third-party firm who really works on lesser rates because they're not involved in the proprietary licenses, be available to satisfy our needs as opposed to going back to the proprietary maker. This has been very, very successful, is what Wal explained to me, and we used up the amount of money on the original procurement because we're not using as much of the proprietary software vendors. So if my understanding is correct on this thing, this makes a tremendous amount of sense for us.
The only question was whether or not you're locking out others from entering that field for an additional period of time, and your answer is no.
Correct.
That's fine.
Do you think John is comfortable with this? Is John coming back? He's out for a moment.
That was his question, right?
Right.
So I'd like to move this, if it's okay. Oh, here's John now. If I'd like to move this to the board, if that's the case. Is that okay with everybody that was there? Okay, so then we're going to move this and send it down to the board.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, but before we vote on this, I tell you, there's one thing in here, and this also applies to Long Island Railroad. And I don't know if this can be answered right now, but we're extending all these supervision contracts where the underlying capital contract has been delayed or gone farther. And some of these are huge. Clowder is $27 million here. Oh, you did? Okay, well, I wasn't there. All right. Then the other one here on the, which is in the Long Island Railroad, I guess. This other one was on Metro North. You got here $326 million. I don't understand something. If we're going and we're going to give these huge contracts, and I understand these people are here, they're on the job, they know all the stuff. But to me, don't you think we should be getting some discounts on these rates now going forward? Where these contracts were originally, this thing was originally URS, for example, under Long Island was a $28 million contract. It's now $326 million. For that kind of money, I think before we approve these things, we ought to get some kind of discount. I'm sorry, brother. Or something else, I don't know what.
That was one of the 2 points we made this morning. And the second one was where you have a bid of X and you choose from 3 or 4 or even 2 competitors based on the X, and then suddenly you see a huge addition, which dwarfs the original bid. It's troublesome to say the least.
But Chuck, I've been doing this. The problem is these guys understand the job. They're there. We all know the problem. But I still think that the MTA is entitled, when you got a contract that's now 10 times or 20 times higher than the thing was originally, we're entitled to a better rate, a rate discount on this thing.
Can we do this, if I may? Can we suggest, not command, but suggest, by way of a friendly amendment to the resolution, that the MTA attempt to secure a discount?
I think if they don't, I think they should come back to us and tell us why this is not possible.
So moved.
Should it be a discount for another bid, perhaps?
Well, that was exactly what Andrew just said.
I don't know who.
We had a long,
Bob.
wait, Andrew,
You know about. I know.
we
it's
had a
happened.
long discussion this morning.
Right, but-
Someone needs to, from,
Look.
doctor needs to respond.
Oh, Michael, you're here. Great. You're lucky.
Pull up a microphone.
Were you here for this? What happened here? Is he aware? Michael, are you aware?
I'm aware because I was here this morning when
Okay.
they actually added to the
All right. So what can we do about this? I mean, I don't know. I don't think
We're talking about the URS contract?
Yep. No, it's more than URS. There's a among other ones. It
There are
goes
only
for
2
all
of them. There is URS, and the other one is with a joint venture of Jacobs Lero.
No. Then there's here
Contracts that are not yours.
Oh, I'm sorry.
on the Metro North.
Okay.
No,
Michael, he wants to try to negotiate for a discount.
But we did, actually.
On the Metro North, there's Louis T. Clowder is another one.
I would rather not answer for an agency that responds to someone else, but I can tell you what happens as a contract like the URS contract and what we're able to do. To start with, it's important to understand that there is a limited pool of consultants that actually we can call upon to deliver this service, because the big consultants that actually could compete for the contract, they are engaged in design for us, so therefore are ineligible for doing construction management. Now, that put aside, understanding the issue, we have done a couple of things. Number one, we've negotiated a lower profit rate for the consultants. We have negotiated at one point a freeze on any increases. And going forward, I think after 2012, we have lowered their adjustment, that they normally were allowed to, from 3.5% to 3%. So we have done that, and we are continuing to do that, because even though we are asking for a certain amount of money to be put in the budget,
we're actually not giving the consultant full access to this money. We're looking into the tasks at hand, and then every task we are negotiating what the cost of the task is with the consultant. So in addition to that, what we have said in the summary, if I'm correct, is that we will look to see if we can make it more competitive and bid it out, and put it out for competitive bidding. But again, what we needed to understand is, and we have not yet been able to totally do that, to ascertain what is the pool that we're looking at. So there is a balance that you wants to keep in mind as to what you're getting from them, and what happens if you put it out for competitive bidding again. One of the things that we need to do, and in this particular case, is that we may have to have, assuming that someone else would win, for a period of 6 months, we need to have a transition, because people are staffed today in positions that many of them need to be, if they are being replaced, they have to transition it. Some of the people that we have, as an example for the URS, these are people that work for us almost as an extension of an MTACC staff. We only have 128 people, so you cannot run. So
I understand what the problems are, and I to be realistic, it's very hard. These people know the job. I know exactly where where you are with this thing. However, I think that there's so much money involved in this thing now, and I think there's a lot of concern amongst the board that we have to really sit down now. We should get a report in writing what these costs, when we gave out a $28 million contract, what the hourly rates were, what the costs were involved, what the overhead and profit was on the job. And now when it's $325 million, what the hourly rates are, what the costs are, the profit, the overhead is being charged to us. I think before we approve something like this now, I would personally myself, I would like to see this in writing, where we were, where we are now, and what it's going to be for the extension.
the first contract was approved apparently in 1998 as not for 28 million, but for $168 million, if I'm correct. 164, I'm sorry. It was in 1998, 15 years ago.
No, Michael, according to this, $28,553,000.
No, this was an assignment. The contract approved by the board was 164. There's a table that I don't have in front of me, but, David?
2 lines below.
We have June of 98, 164,092 was approved.
No, but that wasn't
and
the original.
authorized by the, excuse me? The contract approved and authorized was for 164,092, $164 million.
So what was the $28 million?
The $28 million was an initial award, okay, for program management support. Remember that this actually, you may remember, I'm only retelling the story here, that the first contract was a joint venture of URS and Bechtel that were hired to do the project management for the East Side Access in 98. And that has gone a number of changes since that time. So the 28,556,700.
But I think, wait a second, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think with this kind of money involved, we're entitled to have a report I'd like to see in writing, and I'm sure everybody else would, of what this thing was in the beginning, whatever it was, whatever the original amount was, and where we are today, what the overhead and profit is, what the rate per man hour on this thing was. I think we should really review this. This is a
I'm
tremendous
sure
amount of
that
money.
we can, I'm convinced that we can put it together. It's a historical document. I'm sure that it's going to be very different from 98 to 2014 is soon enough. So potentially the overhead probably didn't change much, but the rates change probably significant because the people are being paid, and this is not one person, one rate. This is a variety of rates that encompass the variety of tasks. So,
Right, but Michael, if somebody's
Yes.
in charge to 10% for overhead on a $28 million job or a $100 million job, and now the job's $400 million, I would think that there would be some kind of a volume discount on the thing.
Let me put it in a couple of sentences. Overhead, in general, is not something, because we are working under the federal regulations, overhead is an auditable thing, and we do not get to tell a consultant what their overhead is or is not. It's audited, and whatever the audited number is the one that they get paid. What we can negotiate with them in general is the profit, and that's something that we do judiciously. And the other part is, in many instances, the rates that are being charged. That means the individual that we have, what are the rates that we are charging, and that is depending on the qualification of the individual. So, and these are pretty much, many of them are run-of-the-mill, and some of them are not. I would also like to point out that this particular contract does not cover just consulting services. It covers, as an example, the fact that we, through them, provide security services throughout the project. That means we have about 40 people that badge
I
people.
understand
So
that.
it's a variety of things. It's just,
I'm not questioning that they're there,
Yeah.
that you need them and all that. I'd just like to know when a contract is 4 times what it originally was planned to be. And by the way, there's many others in here that are the same thing. I think the MTA is entitled to a hell of a volume discount. That's my only point.
the volume discount that you're talking about, again, I'm going to try to be as clear as I can. Consulting services, under the federal regulations, there are a certain way that you have to procure that. We don't have the luxury of telling them, oh, we'll give you only this or we'll give you only that. The overhead is totally auditable, and we don't get to tell them how much we're going to pay them. Just do not. And they cannot tell us how much they want to get paid. It has to be audited, and in the event that they are exceeding the overhead, they get to give us money back, and vice versa. So that's constantly happening. I just want you to understand, we do that. I mean, MTA Audit does it, and they report directly to the chairman, and we don't get to come into the middle of that. The other part is that to give you if the overhead fluctuated, I think we can do that, quickly. To give you the rates of individuals and look to see what happens over time, it's an interesting piece of information. I'm not sure what that's going to do, because normally we constantly, when we staff jobs, they come in with the individual and say this person is an inspector, gets paid, I don't know, $25 an hour or $30 an hour, and this is getting $100 an hour. So there are various rates, and the rates are the rates that are acceptable today on the market. So we challenge them sometimes, but sometimes you don't get to challenge because there is no other replacement for that. So we can give you that, but meantime, our need is to, in effect, continue the services that we have. And unfortunately, we are running out of money, but we can probably come back and give you the rates, and I can give you the profit margin for every contract that we issued. Not a problem. We have it. And I'm David, is that easily? Yes, apparently we can get it to you probably in a couple of days.
I think we had this discussion at both Metro North and Long Island Railroad this morning, and I don't think anybody was comfortable with it. We understood Michael's explanations of it. We accepted Michael's explanations of it. Is anybody comfortable with doing it? I think the answer to that question is no. Nobody's comfortable with it. Yeah.
Andrew,
We agree.
this is similar to the issues that I've raised on procurements
Right.
over many years. A company bids on a job, they get the job, and then we actually ask for more things than we originally asked for, and so the company comes back and asks for an additional appropriation, and that keeps happening, and all of a sudden you've got a major change, and no other company that originally bid on it has a chance to bid. That's the problem.
Right.
just,
If I was one of the competing bidders,
let me make,
Yeah, is this just for consulting, or is it for part of the project also?
Construction.
What's incorporated into the 26 into the 600?
No, this is, let me
Is
just
it just
try to.
consulting,
it's
Michael?
okay. No, let me just say a couple of things. Part of it, right, is construction management. And when you look at the amount of money as a percent of the construction cost, we're about 6.9%, okay? You have to look in a more, because normally what we do is we look at the percent of construction management design as a percent of the cost to build. And that normally is a good indicator if we are within the ballpark of where we're supposed to be.
Excuse me, Michael. Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Chuck, let me ask you a question. How do you feel? I'd like to hear what you feel.
here's where I come out. Seems to me that, no, let me tell you why. I've listened to Michael, and it seems to me this is where we should come out. We ought to approve this now and revisit it when he has had an opportunity to put together the data. This is not going to be an overnight issue. From what I hear from Michael, you've got people in every end of the construction program. You've got people on security, you've got advisors, you've got consultants, and it's the kind of thing that has escalated. But it seems to me that at some point at an early date, he can come back with a specific concept and backup for it and discuss it first with the chair and then with the board or the committee.
Can I ask one question, Michael, before we go on to this? This is strictly for construction management. It's not for the cost of any construction.
No, this is not for the cost of construction.
No, but what was the cost of the construction at the $26 million construction management bid?
The $26 million was almost I don't want to call it as a down payment on something, but we didn't even have preliminary design when we did that.
Okay, but after we got the preliminary design and everything, did the magnitude of the job increase to warrant that much of an increase
Okay.
in the construction
Let me,
management?
I'm going to try to, actually, I tried this morning to,
Yes,
Yes, right?
that is correct. Michael, I think the point.
Michael, the
point he's
magnitude
trying to
I'm
make-
sorry, when we
the point he's
started
trying to
that-
make- The point he's trying to make is this: the cost of the construction.
I got it.
That they are managing
Is increased.
has increased substantially
More than
over
double.
the last 15 years.
more than double.
So therefore, their cost of managing a cost which has increased has increased.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank
I think that's the point.
That's what
Whether
I
we
wanted.
agree with it or
Now,
not
Chairman.
is another question.
No, but Andrew,
Of course.
it's,
We all do.
it's a little more complicated if you, I mean, even go watch from this morning if you want, but there are also non-East Side access components to this one contract, which gets it even more complicated, and there's a future aspect.
Yeah.
But I think there's certainly a question of comfort, at least for me, in approving these kind of contracts. We're talking about, we had all this discussion about the service, of adding service back. You got here alone, I mean, come on, you could, you could build a whole new railroad for these things.
Yeah, this is
I thought we
capital
were.
dollars.
I think that we really, wait a minute, this thing is really big money now. And this other one, which we're not even talking about,
Right.
this other thing, Clowder, where did I find, I can't find it in here. Clowder. There's another one that's getting ready, this is the third rail, where is this thing, Long Island Rail? Where was it?
No, it's Metro North.
Metro North,
Metro North.
okay, Metro North. I mean, I think we really ought to know what we're doing here, and before we just plunge further into this thing, we ought to have some kind of an explanation that makes sense, that there's a comfort level, there's a fiduciary responsibility here in this place.
Bob, could you work something up that shows what the
What's going
increases
on
were
here?
in the product itself, not the construction management, and compare the two, the 26 million to what was supposed to be done and managed for the 26 million, and the 100 and whatever it is now, and what is being managed with that?
Sure.
And
We'll
I
work
think that
with-
would be a good parameter to use to show you why it increased.
They didn't get that increase for not doing more work. Right. Okay.
No, and I just think we're entitled to a volume discount on something like
agree,
this.
and that explanation
Carl,
should be
believe
good.
me, if they were, if you were the contractor and I was the owner, I'd kill you for some kind of a reduction on this.
I thought we were on good terms.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, my goodness. We've had this discussion just about every year that I've been on the board. And it always devolves into a discussion about a specific contract. But each of those contracts is very different. And we always resolve it on the individual contract, but the thing stays in our mind. I agree with Chuck. We should move this because we need to get this accomplished, and we all know that. But we all have a sense of discomfort when what looks like a contract of one size grows to be 2 or 3 or 4 times. We need to make our own minds up about what would make us comfortable, and then talk to the staff about what information they can provide us, not just for this kind of a contract, but for when we buy locomotives. Don't we have this discussion? Well, I'm suggesting something bigger, Andrew. I'm saying we need to resolve it by understanding what it is we want from every type of contract that
But
has
the way you do that,
add-ons.
Susan, is to get the facts on this particular one.
And then we wait for the next one?
No, let's get the facts on this one and see what the bottom is, and then we can devise a policy. But I would like to know, I'd like to get the facts on this Clouder and this URS contract, the two of them, and really trace through this thing and spend some time on it. Because I agree with you, Susan.
Mr. Chairman, is there any material downside to deferring approval of this item?
I don't know. Bob?
Is there any?
I have no idea.
Is there a downside?
Is there any material downside to deferring?
Deferring into January, I have to check, because if we are running out of money at that point, it means that we're going to continue to obligate. I cannot send people home. We have to continue to run projects. So my suggestion would be that we can always, the fact that you are appropriating now a certain amount of money, it does not mean that we're going and giving that money to the consultant. It is only being used as a ceiling against which we are charging. So the point I'm trying to make is that we're going to make a commitment to you that on this specific contract, don't ask me about TJ Clouder or someone else, because I don't know the answer. But on this specific contract, we're going to come back to you and we're going to give you the necessary documentation to understand what changed, when, and how, in terms of overhead, in terms of profit, in terms of an average rate looking over a certain amount of years and what was then and what was now. And at that point, if there is a discomfort, we can then discuss it in a different way and see what can be done so we can actually defund some of it and then go out and bid a new contract.
And Clouder, I would like to get that information too. Who's responsible for Clouder? Okay.
North.
Right. You're lucky.
Mr.
Right.
Chairman, may I make this suggestion by way of both a suggestion and a motion? I'd like to approve this on condition that Capital Construction come back within 90 days and brief us fully on the pieces, and if it can do it sooner, great. But that'll give them breathing room so they can keep working.
Okay. Do you need, Michael, is 90 days a reasonable time? Can
Yes.
we get it done?
Yeah, absolutely. No, not a problem.
So can we do it 60 days?
If I keep saying, if I do like this, you can ask me if I can do it by Wednesday. So,
No, let's do it right. Let's do it right, so we
listen,
really understand what
okay,
happened.
we'll endeavor to do it within 60 days, but just in case, we will have the additional 30 days. But I believe we can do it
And
in
that
60
report will
days.
come back to the Finance Committee.
Okay.
And the same thing goes with the Clower contract. Is that,
So moved.
is that fair? Okay. Okay. So, second, please?
But
All in favor?
Andrew, before you do that, I will tell you, Susan is absolutely correct. At the Metro North and Long Island committees, almost every month, we have issues just like this. Maybe the numbers are not as big, but the context is exactly the same. And so, and we raise the questions, and the questions get raised, and
Nothing happens.
nothing happens.
Right.
So my point is, while I understand we're asking capital construction on this specific one on Metro North, we should come up with a policy of some sort so that next month, we're not all here doing the same thing again, trying to figure out why the project went up,
Doug, will you put
whatever
this
it
in
went
the
up.
minutes, please? I would like this put in the minutes, okay, of the Finance Committee meeting. I think what Mitch said, what Chuck, all this, so that we know when we come back here in 6, we're not just questioning these contracts. I think this is a valid point.
Right.
We want to try and be able to come up with a policy for this whole thing, because this is tons of money now.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna amend the work plan.
Right. Well, listen to
move
this, Doug,
capital.
tell everybody. I think it's, tell what you propose, because, go ahead.
Well,
Do it.
Bob and I suggested that we, earlier I presented the draft work plan for 2014. So what we can do is we'll include a work plan item, March, I don't know. March to cover exactly the conversation that we had today.
But we're going to shoot for February, remember that?
February or March, somebody tell me.
February or March.
And you'll focus on a policy.
It's an information
This
item.
keeps coming up, as Mitch has said, at virtually every Metro North and every Long Island Railroad contract procurement.
And I'm sure it comes up at transit.
We can say it's finance, the finance staff can come up with a policy recommending.
No, but I think we should get, but Alan, we should get the facts first. Let's get the facts first and take a look at the whole thing and see what's happened here. And then we can sit down and really talk about this thing.
The resolution should really be, get the facts with an eye towards formulating a policy.
That's
Right.
what.
Just like we have a policy on refunding, we should have a policy on this.
Because nobody's comfortable with it. I think that's a fair statement. And to support this kind of funding, and we're talking about $20 million yeah, I mean, you're talking about huge money here. We really need to spend some time on this thing. Big money. Yep, it's great. Thank you. And Michael, it's not, it goes for the whole, you understand.
I understand,
It's everything, Metro North, the whole thing.
Not a problem. I
And let's-
understand.
Let's take a look at the whole thing and see what we can do to get this under
I'm
control.
also gonna do one thing for you. I'm gonna endeavor to explain the difference, and it's a huge difference, between contractors and consultants.
Yes.
Consultants in general sell one thing, time, nothing else, as a rule. And that's why it's much harder to say, give me a discount, a quantity discount. It's a very different paradigm. So
That
I'll
I
endeavor to
completely
explain
agree
that too.
Okay, all right, so Doug, can you please just call the motion? Yeah, I'm gonna have to read it, go ahead.
Also at transit, if you look at 5.8, it's all over the place. Welcome aboard.
Give us the motion.
Okay, so,
All right, come on, listen,
It's
just
on.
listen to the motion,
Yeah.
I know we're doing it.
it's on. All right, so we have a motion for capital construction to come back to the Finance Committee with an analysis of its change orders of its large consultant contracts, to see the history of not only the usage requirements, but also the rate requirements and overhead requirements. We want to see, the committee wants to be, for the purpose of making the committee comfortable, either comfortable with that or at least educating the committee, and that ultimately the committee would like to formulate a policy, an official change order policy that would put some sort of limitations or constraints on the types of change orders that would be allowed without board approval. Maybe not.
Procurements, Doug, add the word procurements.
Procurements, yes, procurements.
Okay, so we have the motion, a second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so moved. Support? Yes. Yes. Where were we? Do you have
Which-
any idea?
Yeah, I think so.
Where are we?
Are we going to start from the beginning? No.
No, we did MTA, I know that, that one we
Okay.
did. We
Wait,
got into-
Andrew, I
We
I
got
have
into
to...
trouble on an Metro
okay.
North Railroad.
So
Mr.
I don't-
Chairman,
I don't know
hold
that
on,
we voted
hold
on
on,
Long Island
hold on,
Railroad.
hold on.
Sorry.
Thank you. I think we do need to get a little more structured. I have to make, because when I walked in, staff was concluding. The one that prior to this one, the one that we were talking about was item H, to all agency IT consulting services. And what I was told from one meeting, to the next, staff, we had a nice discussion, was that in fact, the consulting contracts on the H, the all agency IT consulting, were only gonna be through 14, and they were going to go out with a new RFP. So the extensions of those contracts were not gonna be for 5 years. The written material is very confusing. So that, I just want to clarify, that when I was out and came back in, you asked.
Yes.
That's it,
Correct.
through
It's correct.
14, that's what I was
The
told.
powers to be say it's correct, what you said.
If it's 15, that's fine too, but that was it. There was a truncated, they're not coming back for extensions, they're gonna do a
Yes.
complete
Yes.
RFP.
Yes, everybody says yes, done.
Done.
Okay, Doug.
I don't think we voted on Long Island Railroad.
We didn't do
procurements.
Metro North, did we?
Oh, we didn't do Metro,
No.
okay.
We
So there are
blew up
four,
at Metro North, go ahead.
okay, so with the one item moved to push to the regular board on Wednesday, there are 4 procurements for Metro North for a grand total of $11,084,563.
A motion, please. All in favor? Second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? Go ahead, next.
Long Island Railroad, there are 4 competitive procurements. 2 are for large modifications managed by MTA Capital Construction. 1 is multi-agency, 1 is for an RFP for a grand total of $157,308,818.
Second. All in favor? Next.
Next on the agenda, we have 3 procurements for New York City Transit MTA bus operations for a grand total of $345,422,088. 1 is non-competitive and 2 are competitive RFPs.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
There are no items for bridges and tunnels. There are no items from the FinTech. And that would conclude the finance portion of this meeting. Now, real estate. Jeff Rosen is going to take us through that.
Thanks.
Jeff, you have about 1 minute.
Okay. All right, well, yeah, well, I'll be as fast as I can. Well, it's the story of my life. So we have,
Let you go first for the next meeting.
okay, so we have 7 action items because one item F in our agenda is being pulled temporarily until January. There was an environmental piece we didn't get done in time. That's the large one. But I will say that item E references that other item for F. They're kind of interrelated, but I can assure you that the failure to go forward with F really has no bearing on our ability to do E. So the only one of these items that I wanted to speak to, and I will be somewhat brief, but this is an important transaction for us, is the Fulton Center master lease. As you know, the Fulton Center is scheduled to open in June of this year, so it's of next year. So it's essential that we put in place comprehensive arrangements for the operation and maintenance of the facility in advance of that date. And this master lease will allow us to do that in very close to one fell swoop. Those of you who have toured the facility know there's nothing else even remotely like it in the subway system, and frankly, operating and maintaining it would be an enormous logistical challenge for New York City Transit, whether using its own forces or overseeing a multitude of separately procured contractors. Our goal, which we believe we've succeeded handsomely in achieving, has been to transfer responsibility for the operation, cleaning, maintenance, and repair of the entire facility to a single, highly qualified mall operator that will not just be contractually obligated, but also highly motivated in its own self-interest over the long haul and its own cost and risk to maintain the facility in accordance with the high standard of quality that will be required to attract and retain high-quality retailers, which is also the standard that befits the very substantial investment that the public has made in creating this facility. Our plan, indeed, mandate to achieve this result dates back to Jay's time, and we've stayed the course under Joe and Tom's leadership. As you know, MTACC's Fulton Center project has included improvements to the complex's 8 subway platforms and the east-west corridor we call the AC mezzanine. Those areas which are shown in blue in the lease demarcation plans that you have in front of you are excluded from the scope of the master lease and will continue to be, except insofar as some advertising in the AC mezzanine is concerned, and will continue to be operated and maintained by transit in the normal course. But the master lease will cover everything shown in yellow, all of which is new to the system, which is to say the entire new glass and steel structure we're calling the Fulton Building, with its dramatic multi-story atrium and skylight, the historic Corbin Building, the Day Street Concourse, and the Day Street Head House. So we aren't just talking about isolated commercial space here, and we aren't even just talking about interior space. Westfield will be responsible for these buildings from soup to nuts. Yes, Chuck?
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
We have talked about this. Correct me if I'm wrong. This construction cost and maintenance cost on the cost side is heavily, predominantly a federal expenditure. Should we produce any monies from signage or our percentage, however minimal it may be, from rent, that goes to MTA? Is that correct?
Both of those, that was a compound sentence. Both those statements are correct.
And since we're compounding things, am I correct that at the end of the day, this turns out then for us to be a win-win, correct?
That's how I would characterize
I move it.
Okay, well, if I'm done talking, that's fine.
I certainly would echo what Mitch and Chuck have said. Far less luxurious, but no less important are these acquisitions of these parapet walls along the NC Beach line in Brooklyn.
Okay.
For years and years, riders have endured really decrepit conditions on 18th, 20th, 22nd Avenue, 25th. I mean, there's even been television reports on it. So us getting a hold of these walls, making the necessary repairs, stopping the water damage that's coming down on all these stations is going to be a great thing for riders. So it's not as luxurious and not as obviously as high end as the Fulton Center, but it's a great thing.
I would invite you to the West 231st Street station of the number 1 line.
Been there.
But the one thing is, on the Westfield lease, the master lease, just so we understand, Jeff, you're satisfied that the agreement is going to have absolute outs for us in case that the service and the quality of the place is not maintained the way we see fit?
Absolutely, those would be defaults under the agreement. But what I want to stress is that we have a deep pocket here, a major
nobody's
developer
question, but
with a long-term interest in the trade center.
But 10
So
years
they're
from now,
clearly
who
gonna wanna do
knows,
this
you know?
right. Well, I think 10 years from now, they're going to have an interest in the trade
Good,
center.
but just in case?
And we have default provisions under the agreement.
Okay, so can we take all these in one vote now, or?
Okay with me. That's 7 items, I think.
Okay, so all 7 items. We have a motion, please? Second, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, and now we need a motion to adjourn the finance. I knew there would be a problem. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.